Hi, James Kerti here, back with another episode of the HoopsThink show, where we break down the game and build it back up. Today I'm talking with Alex Kline, high school basketball recruiting guru, founder of the RecruitScoop.com and 2013 Forbes 30 Under 30. So, really cool guest. This episode has a college basketball slant, but a lot of what we talk about, specifically with regard to player evaluation, could go for just about any level. So, this is a really cool episode, and I sure hope you enjoy it. I got to give a quick shout out to my boys at Brew Pony. If you're a basketball nerd like me, that means a lot of late nights and early mornings, and that means caffeine. But don't drink crappy coffee. Brew Pony delivers fresh artisan coffee into your mailbox every month. It's very affordable. The coffee is fantastic, and I got you hooked up. 10% off if you go there and enter coupon code HoopsThink. So again, that's www.brewpony.com. 10% off with coupon code HoopsThink. Get on it. Hey, James Kerti here with the HoopsThink show, here with Alex Kline, with whom I have been mistaken a few times by a couple different college coaches at AAU events. Hopefully you guys can tell us apart. Anyway, Alex, pleasure to have you on, man. Can you give everybody just a quick little elevator pitch about who you are and what you got going on?
Great to be here, James. I'm Alex Kline from the Recruit Scoop on Rivals.com. You probably know me from Twitter, but I basically run my own recruiting service, trying to give these guys a lot of exposure and trying to give myself a little exposure on the side as well. But happy to join you today.
For sure, man. Thanks for stopping by. The first thing that I wanted to ask you, and obviously a lot of people watching know that you've got a really strong background in the high school recruiting game. And what I'm wondering is, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that young players, particularly high school players, face in making the transition to the college level? Like, what are just some of the big challenges that they face in both their day-to-day life and also making the adjustment to playing in games in college?
I think the day-to-day life is just independence, living away from your family, just living on your own for any college student is really tough. Making the transition where, your family's not going to wash your clothes, you have to go to class, you have to wake up on time, you really have to just manage your time really well. And that translates into basketball too, considering you're going to have to, make sure you get to practice on time, practice for the right amount of hours, get your grades right. On the court, the speed of the game, the physicality, it's just so different. You look at your typical high school team, you have one big man, maybe, typically all the kids on the team are like 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". You look at your typical high major basketball program, you have, 4 or 5 guys who are like over 6'8", 6'9", 6'4" guards. So the speed of the game is obviously different, more plays, more demanding coaches. Obviously, if you go from being the star of your high school team, that really changes when you hit the ground running with college.
Yeah.
Most likely you're not going to start. You're going to really have to work your way, and you start out as the freshman again. So it's a big mental thing too. You go from averaging 20 points a game and 10 rebounds a game your senior year to being the 8th man off the bench. It's bizarre. It's really different for these guys, and I think once they come to grips with reality, and then they start buying into the program and what the coach is telling them, then they have a shot from there. But you can't assume for automatic success. I think perfect example last night.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Cooney went for I think 27 points, a career high. His first year at Syracuse, he redshirted. His second year. He was a shot maker who, after 30 seconds, if he missed a shot, he'd kind of be paranoid,
Exactly, yeah.
Pulled. And young players need to look at that because last night he didn't get pulled. He had 27 points. He had, I think, like 7 or 8 threes. I mean, it was a ridiculous performance. But little things like that, you just see the constant development and buying into the program as opposed to getting frustrated and transferring out to a smaller program.
Absolutely, man. Great example there. And, obviously you have a lot of great relationships, both with college coaches and with the players, and you're an evaluator too, which kind of makes you a cool triple threat. And what are some of the signs that you've maybe noticed in some of the young guys who make the transition really well, as opposed to some of the guys who really, struggle for 2, 3, sometimes even 4 or 5 years of their college career? Like, what really separates the guys who handle that really well from the guys who don't?
I think the maturity level, I think prep school can help anyone. Just because obviously you're used to living away from your family, you're used to boarding life, and you're used to being in them all the time. Finding the right fit as far as a program goes and the coaching staff goes, it's not always about the highest program. It's not about, whatever's the sexiest fit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to be local. Another example, John Sevier last night had 28 points his first game. I think that's a freshman record at Fordham. He could have gone to Pittsburgh. He could have gone to a number of high major options.
Absolutely.
But you find the right system. You find the right system for you, and you transition into it. Obviously, having the physical gifts that helps too. Being strong, not having a lot of flaws with your game. It's not going to come as easy as most freshmen expect it to. So, just finding the right balance of that. But obviously, the physical tools help. You look at Julius Randle. You look at Jabari Parker. Last night they dominated. Jabari Parker, he's got the physical tools. He's got, obviously, a very rare and dynamic skill set.
Yes, he does.
Randle, physical as can be, can handle the ball, can shoot it, can drive. You want to have a lot of versatility to your game. Obviously, if you're a shooter, but you want to be able to do other things. You want to be able to pass the ball, rebound, make some plays defensively. If you can play defense, you're going to get in the game.
Yeah, defense is huge, man. And sorry to interrupt. One thing that you mentioned that I really kind of wanted to zero in on a bit. You mentioned how important it is for a player to go to a school where he's in the right fit, both in terms of the environment, maybe being close to home, or being with a coach who really has his back and maybe playing with the right system and the right teammates. And from a coach's perspective, because I feel like the coach is really important here. What are some ways that as a coach you can make sure you're picking guys who are going to fit in well, both with your personnel, your system, your staff, and your environment? Like what? Because we do have college coaches watching this show. So what would you say to some of those guys?
I think obviously it's tough with the evaluation period because especially now in the spring, you take out the May evaluation period. That's tough. I think obviously you want to see your player play as much as possible. But along with that, you want to get to know them very well, too. I think you look at seniors who sign in the spring, and it's kind of a free-for-all. Whoever you can get on campus, whoever becomes available, you just kind of go after you offer them a scholarship, and if they accept, shoot, we'll take them. I think it's tough when it comes to the visit process because obviously not everyone can drive 10 minutes away and find their dream school. So traveling is tough, but the more times you get a kid on campus if you're a coach, and the more times you as well as your entire staff gets them. I think the issue is a lot of staffs, they just have one guy who goes after a certain amount of kids.
Great point.
And that staff doesn't really get to know them. It's, the one assistant and the head coach, and the head coach knows them a little. I think that as a player, you need to be very comfortable with your entire staff. They're going to be working with you. Your recruiting coordinator, he's not going to be the one necessarily coaching you at your position in practice. The head coach obviously makes all the calls. Right. The head coach leaves, you're going to need to get to know the other assistants because one of them could take over. So it's good to know everyone. You want to know your strength and conditioning coach. So, but on a coach's perspective, obviously getting to know your players as well as possible, knowing their trends, knowing what they need to improve on, obviously, knowing what makes them tick, and what you can do as a coach to get them out of a funk or to get them to work harder. So there's a lot of things. Also, I think taking early commitments, while it's sexy, it doesn't always work out. How's the kid going to pan out? How can you project that the kid's going to pan out to your level, to your school in the 9th grade or the 10th grade? Obviously, it's tough when everyone else is offering. And it's okay to offer, but taking a commitment that early, it's tough. You really need to get to know the kid well before you can say, okay, that's our guy. That's the one we want, because at the end of the day, these kids are the ones who help, gain you your extension or lose you your job.
Absolutely, man. Good call on that. And when it comes to evaluating guys, I feel like there's a couple different things to look at. On one hand, you're looking at the guy as to who he is, right now as a player and as a person, but you're also doing a little bit of projecting and seeing, what's this guy's upside going to be like? How can we maybe see him developing? And I feel like maybe there's some sort of sweet spot in there where you're, look taking his potential into serious consideration and thinking about how his skill set's going to fit into your system, but you're also looking at how ready to go he is right now. And is that something that you've noticed that maybe more successful colleges and coaching staffs are doing really well? And if so, how?
I think it really happens a lot with big men. Guards, once they get to college, they're not going to grow much more. Wings, it's the same thing. But with big men, you look at some of these big men who are like 6'9", 6'10", gawky, awkward kids coming out of high school.
Totally.
And you say, you're taking him? And it just kind of baffles you. So the real interesting thing is seeing, how they develop in college. I think when they're high school freshmen or sophomore, you can kind of tell, potential-wise and projection-wise, like, okay, maybe this guard is only 5'11" right now, but his wingspan's really long. You see the arms, you see the full body, and it's like, okay, well, he's going to be growing, obviously. So then you can kind of project from there.
Definitely.
So it's little things like that. Obviously work ethic counts, but when you're given such a unique body and a unique skill set, your athleticism typically isn't going to change. If you're athletic, you're athletic. If not, you can do a little something to improve it, but it's not going to change much. So it's little things like that, but it's tough to project these things with pinpoint accuracy. No one can really do it. It's more so, an educated guess based on previous experiences and previous players. So I think we base a lot of what we've seen with previous players who have similar tendencies, similar skill sets, similar bodies.
Definitely. I think as an evaluator, having that kind of mental database, I actually had Frank Burleson on the show in the last couple weeks. And one of the things that, he told me and told the HoopsThink audience here is, one of the things that he really does is he always refers back to his mental database and thinks
Right.
about, how the guy that he's looking at now, maybe compares to some guys that he's seen before. And
Exactly.
even just how he's seen that guy, because a lot of the times if you're watching a guy from 8th grade through his senior year of high school, and if you're evaluating every step of the way, you can really see how a kid is developing and progressing, and that can really go a long way in helping you figure out what you're looking at. And one other thing I'm really curious about with you, Alex, as an evaluator and talking with some of these college coaches, do you see the more successful guys and maybe yourself thinking more in terms of, what are these players like specialized skills? Like, is he just a really great shooter, but, on the other hand, maybe is a little lackadaisical on the defensive end or as a ball handler? Or are you looking more for guys who are just really solid all around, but maybe don't distinguish themselves in any particular way?
I think it varies based on each kid.
Okay.
You obviously want someone who, if they have a certain skill set, I think it depends on the coach. Sometimes they'll say, we're looking for a knockdown shooter. I mean, like, for example, a couple weeks ago, SMU is saying we need a knockdown shooter. We can do a little this, a little that, but we need a knockdown shooter. So certain schools and certain coaches, they're going to want specific things. Other coaches, if they have a number of scholarships, or they're kind of thinking, we need a little everything, then they'll go for, maybe that 6'5" wing who can shoot it a bit, who can distribute it, who can play
Great point.
1, the 2, the 3, the 4, can guard multiple positions. So it's really a case-by-case basis, and it ranges for a lot of these kids. I mean, now you can be okay in every single skill position, but because you have that, unique skill set, college coaches are going to like you. Obviously, rebounding. You look at so many of these NBA players, and you wonder, how the hell are they staying in the NBA? Well, they rebound. That's their main skill set.
Exactly, like the Kenneth Freeds of the world, for example.
Exactly. And I think it's really undervalued. If you can do a single thing, I think shooters get away with it. College coaches, you need a shooter. A guy puts the ball in the basket. Rebounders a little less appreciated. I think defensive guys, I always like to see.
Me too.
When a mid-major school finds a backup point guard, because typically a high-major school, they're going to find the backup point guard as someone who will eventually take over. But more so, I
Precisely.
look for, with a mid-major program, as far as the point guard goes, to look for someone who they know they're going to be a backup. They know they're not going to be, shooting the ball much, but they come in, they play the defensive stopper, and whatever position is, they D up the best player on the opposing team, and that's their role. And that's not a bad thing. Yeah,
Exactly. I completely
it's
agree, man.
it's not a waste of a scholarship, and you know I think a lot of coaches do realize that, but I think it's really undervalued. In AAU, in high school, it's probably where it's the best, actually, just because you're given so many not so talented kids
That's
that
true.
someone who just plays tough and has that crazy mentality can be just a lockdown defender. So it's underappreciated on all levels.
Definitely, man. And we'll get this wrapped up in a little bit. But one more question for you. Speaking of guys who are really kind of knowing their roles, I know there's really a perception right now that there's been more high profile transfers in college right now than ever. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I haven't crunched the data, but that perception is definitely there among the media and a lot of the college coaches that I've talked with. What do you think about that, especially in reference to what you're just saying about guys knowing their roles?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough because I'm sure there are as many high major kids that transfer as there are mid major kids and low major kids. Because obviously, the low major kids who end up going Division two, no one really profiles that. Um, High major kids, they're going to get that because everyone knew them in high school. It's a high major program. Oh well.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that it has to be like this, where you have 400, 500, 600 transfers a year. But it kind of comes with it. I mean,
It
this is
does.
it's a business. If you don't, and partially it can be the coach's fault, who you're promising them different things that they may not get. It can be the coach's fault also because you're recruiting over them with other
Yeah.
kids. But it can also be the kid's fault or the parent's fault for just thinking, okay, my kid's pretty good, so let's just test this out. And quite simply, the issue is there are too many college programs and not enough kids to go around. So that's,
Good
I mean,
point.
like I said before, with the spring signing period in college basketball for seniors, it's crazy. It's madness.
Oh, it's
You'll see
nuts.
you see 10 kids commit a day who you're like, um, there's a two-star committing to an SEC school. What's going on?
Yeah.
And obviously, some of these kids end up better than we project them. Some
True.
end up worse. But I just feel like a lot of these kids are being very risky. It's okay to gamble on defense. It's okay to gamble in other ways. But when it comes to your college career, it's just not the safest thing. I mean, yeah, you can transfer and go to a smaller level or go to a high.
We are back in business.
Okay, geez.
We are back.
It's as
Life is
if I
good.
transferred out.
Yes, right in the middle of the transfer discussion, you were like, man, this Hoops Thing show is pretty cool, but I'm taking my talents to South
Elsewhere.
Florida.
I wish.
Good stuff, man. So, yeah, I guess on that note, we'll kind of get things wrapped up. Did you want to say a little bit more about the transfers?
No, it speaks for itself. There's too many, and something needs to happen. I don't know what, but it speaks for itself, unfortunately.
Gotcha. Cool, man. Well, thanks again for stopping by today, Alex. It's been really great
Absolutely.
having you on. Is there anything you kind of like to leave people with, whether it's a little plug for the MKC or, whatever?
Um, Mary Kline Classic 2014. Not sure on a date yet. Not sure on a venue yet. You'll know soon. But support cancer research. It's a great thing, and we need to end cancer very soon. And
Yeah, we do.
I think if the basketball world can drop its alliances with shoe companies and everything like that for a couple days, it'd be nice to get the support. But I appreciate your time, James, and I appreciate everyone's support as always. So thanks for having me.
For sure, man. Thanks again. Thanks for watching through this episode, despite that little technical snafu there near the end. But good times. Pleasure talking with Alex. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and most importantly, opt into the email list at www.hoopsthink.com to get the latest email updates whenever we launch a new show or any other kind of update, including some exclusive content. So tune in.